I want you to think back to the first time you ever remember being truly afraid. What was it? Does it stick with you today? This is the sort of thing that we talk about on the House of Asher. Won't you join us? The House of Asher, a clearinghouse for the mind.
Hey, welcome to House of Asher. I'm your host, Steve Asher, and you're with us on episode 8. I'm amazed that we've got through episode 8. That's pretty cool, and I'm glad that people seem to be responding pretty well to it. It is a early Saturday morning, and we're sitting here in my little office of international horror, as you see all the weird, freaky crap on the back of my wall. There's a little thing I want to show you. I've had this for a minute, and she's precious to me. Like I said, I got 3 daughters, and she's not my daughter, but she's kind of close. She's a beautiful little thing, and I want to show you. This here is Miss Linda Scare. She is a beautifully painted figurine by a dear friend of mine by the name of Doug Oller, and we kind of have walked the same paths for years. Didn't necessarily know each other until I started doing my book work in the Hauntings of series. He had kind of was running around. He's a Paducah kid, and he's kicked it up there with a lot of punk bands. And as he got older and stuff like that, started doing paranormal work. Not to mention the fact that he is a consummate artist, and he's did a lot of different things. He's very often to the sort of the circus style of kind of maybe carny-esque, maybe it's too strong a word, but it's definitely in that vein. And I want to welcome my good friend, Doug Oller. How you doing, Doug?
I'm doing great. Glad to be on the show. Hopefully get the word out and everything, and get some more people to find out about my artwork and sharing all things cool, creepy, and paranormal.
Man, yeah, that's what it's about. And so, like I said, now, can you give them just a little quick prepper and what's kind of what you're about, how you come up getting into this sort of stuff, and what you're doing now?
When I was a kid, I grew up north, and we had a lot of Chicago TV and radio. So I grew up watching creature features and Spenguli and stuff. My older brother, he didn't want me to be afraid of anything, so he'd stay up late nights with me. We'd watch old Dracula and Frankenstein movies and Godzilla. And that kind of got me started as a fan. Then when I got older, those creatures kind of, evolved into like the Freddys and the Jasons and, the horror characters that are out today. But there was also another show when I was a kid. It's called In Search of Leonard Nimoy.
Oh, yeah.
It was Bigfoot, UFOs, and abductions, and, ancient aliens, and they had a lot of really cool stuff. Now it got me thinking. It's like, I always like these creatures from the movies, but what if this stuff's real? What if there's something else out there besides, just the Hollywood makeup, special effects, and the characters that, what if something's walking around or something paranormal or, these ghosts and things. So that kind of got me in that aspect too. But, like you said, with the circus, the sideshow, and all that, that was always a, big influence to me as a child too. So, that, the movies and comic books and all, it just all came together.
Well, it's really strange how, and I totally forgot about you being from up in that area, because like I said, my wife, all her people were like, Chicagoites and all that, and it's just so funny, how like people end up kind of converging in small little southern areas and stuff, but yeah, that was very similar for me too, because like I said, I come up really young watching like Scooby-Doo and stuff like that, and that was kind of a safer thing, and then like my older brothers listened to like it's not really horror metal, but Sabbath and things like that, and with darker themes, and it scared the crap out of me, man. I was I wasn't even 10 years old, and I would like to say I was, Joe Dirt and sitting there just banging with it, and I was like knocking on the door, please turn it off, I'm scared, I was just kind of a wimpy kid, but because of that, and then watching shows like we talked about, Kolchak the Night Stalker, then In Search of later, and Night Gallery, and what was the what I was talking about? Trilogy of Terror, and with all the little fetish dolls and stuff. And
Trilogy of Terror, Forgot Valentine's Music Ball John. I was like 5 or 6 years old when that came out.
that was rough.
It was real. I did not know it was special, but I thought it was really happening, and I was with my grandparents at the time. They lived way out the backwoods. It was really dark and everything. We watched a little TV in a little dark house, and my gosh, man, that kind of got in my head and it stayed there for a while.
Right.
Anyway, with the little lady that was in the bathtub in The Shining.
Oh.
People's house, I think behind the shower curtain, there's a little lady in the bathtub, because it's always had that little freaky fear of that,
Right. Well, no, I know a lot of people have said.
Another one that you mentioned too, single block. The kid outside the window that was floating around the back of the window and the fire itself was single block. All that stuff was pretty hardcore for the time period. I mean, it was made for TV too, so I mean, it wasn't like you were kids, it was just like your mouse,
Well, you got to remember too. I mean, yeah, exactly, because it's like, for me, like Trilogy of Terror. This is pre-Chucky, and you had like Chatty Cathy and things like that, or whatever on Twilight Zone and stuff, but that it was never wide open like that. And then, like you said, once you went off into Salem's Lot, which I catch myself saying Danny Glick, because for so many years my daughters, they loved the film, but they talked about, I want to watch Danny Glick, because I didn't quite get it with Salem's Lot. But anyway, I'm conditioned to say Danny Glick. But yeah, no, and that's another thing. If I'm not mistaken, was it I'm blanking on his name. Oh God, he's a director, big director. I apologize.
It was Toby Hooper.
Hooper. Yeah, Toby. For some reason, I want to say Tommy Hooper. I said, no, that's not. I'm not going to screw it up and say that. But yeah, Toby Hooper. Yeah, did Toby. And he's, like I said, and that's the crazy thing is that, the way I understood it, he wasn't even going to be the original director at the time. For some reason, I thought they were going to have, not Wes Craven's, I'm sorry, George Romero. Because he was courting back and forth. Stephen King was courting somebody because he wanted to have sort of a kind of a horror edge. But then the way that, Hooper always had like he could be pretty visceral in some of his stuff. And for a television miniseries, it was pretty, it was fairly bloody for the time, and that's the thing, just seeing like little creepy dead kids floating outside your window, man, and anytime it gets foggy here, as in Western Kentucky, a rain or even a snow, you get that kind of radiation fog where it's kind of evaporating at night. It gets really foggy through here, and that's the first thing I think of.
You got a lot of backwoods, you got a lot of little creepy areas,
right.
And there's a lot of places around here that just kind of legendary. There's always the old spooky house down the road, or the old abandoned farm, or something like that. People make up their own stories, their own legends.
Right.
There's a lot of real stuff that actually happens in this area. And those stories get told and retold, and become kind of legendary.
You're absolutely right.
It's like the whole mythology to the area where we're at.
Well, and that's what I try to explain to people. People either that have not really ventured this way, and I'm not just talking just like a north-south thing. Maybe it's somebody out west, maybe somebody on the other side of the planet. They'll go, okay, well, it's Kentucky, so it's about horse racing, it's about bourbon, it's about, they'll think Deliverance or something, or just super, super conservative politics. And I'm like, man, there's so much more. I mean, there's some really cool people, artsy people, super eclectic personalities that are here. But then again, sometimes a pig farm's not just a pig farm. You know what I mean? Sometimes some dark stuff's went down there, and that's what's so interesting about it. You've got that kind of classic beauty in certain areas of the South, and it's got like the antebellum mansions and the rolling hills and the beautiful architecture and stuff. But there's also, where especially in the poorer sections where a lot of times violent stuff seems to go down more often than not. But okay, so obviously, you got into all that type of lifestyle. I mean, in horror and rock and all that, it is a certain lifestyle. You never quite. I mean, I'm almost 50 now, and I've not outgrown it. And
yeah, like I said, we grew up around the same time period and everything. And like I said, in the 80s, I got playing like Dungeons and Dragons. So I was like fantasy too because of the Ray Harryhausen movies and the Cyclopses and monsters.
The stop motion was great.
When the game came out, my friends were playing. It was just natural for us, like being fans of like Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit stuff, dwarves and orcs. It's like, man, this is, as artistic and imaginary and, just storytelling. It just helped kind of bring all that together. And groups of kids that didn't have nothing else to do on a Friday, Saturday night, drink Mountain Dew and eat Cheetos, roll some dice.
Right. Well, and
and listen to, Odditties or Sabbath in the background while we was doing it.
exactly.
Had a lot of good times. And when you live in the country, too, you got to kind of make your own fun. You got to kind of like, as friends, run out and explore, get out in the woods or find little abandoned houses or whatever. And it's kind of cool what you do as a kid. And then when you get to being an adult, it's like, oh, wow, now we can, actually explore these places with equipment and actually, see if we get ghost readings or, find out the history of stuff, or take out little graveyards and,
Right.
see where people have been buried in mountains and, stuff like that.
Right.
It's kind of weird how all that kind of like falls together.
Well, I mean,
It's not a bad area to be doing it,
well, it's sort of it's sort of like fingers of the same hand, and it was a thing with me. Just one second. You gotta love somebody trying to call you in the middle of an interview. I apologize for that. No, all I was saying was, where you were, I did D&D too, and which now I was also a big Star Wars kid. I remember going and seeing the first movie, and now being kind of a broke down kid, and there's nothing wrong with that. You had to be more inventive. So anytime people had like styrofoam, from record players, or everything was coming in that white styrofoam, but it was real easy to cut, real easy to put like a little Elmer's glue because it didn't eat it up like super glue did, and you make two or three level. Like I loved Empire Strikes Back, right? So you had all the Hoth stuff and the snow, the snow troopers. And so anyway, I was really digging that. So I would try to make my own little stuff. And I remember you were talking about the stop motion stuff. I also loved Clash of the Titans, and I tried to make my own little.
Clash of the Titans is a real good classic. Yeah, that right there, really good cinema. Really good film.
Well, do you remember like the was it not Bilbo, but Boobo, the little metal owl? I've always dug owls.
Owl, yeah.
And I remember, I think I told you this. I think the first time we actually physically met was at one of my book signings in Paducah, and I was telling you about I would used to get like aluminum foil and ball it up and try to kind of shape it and like put toothpicks for a little head, and it looked like, oh hey, a kid made a little funky looking owl out of aluminum foil balls. But the point was the interest was there, the imagination was there. There's definitely a lot of worse crap I could have got caught up in the middle of, and for me, art, music, and literature, and reading, and because like we touched on, like Salem's Lot, Stephen King, and I love Stephen King, and I even did I think the first time you saw me, I had a Stephen King shirt on, as a nod to him, because like you said, obviously you don't try to steal from anybody, but it's imitation is the best form of, most sincere form of flattery or whatnot. And, I'm sure there's elements of the flow and his tempo and stuff like that I adopted as my own, just for the fact that I read so many of his dang books. And but now touching on a little bit of some of your work, like Linda there, like when did you start doing that, and how did it sort of grow and morph into wider arrays of stuff?
It's kind of tough or whatever. Sometimes you make your own fun or make your own items and stuff. And like I said, if it was too expensive to buy, you customize your own or make your own or do whatever, or work with what you have. When you're little, you can grab a broom handle and use it for a gun if you want to or something like that. But get some aluminum foil or some styrofoam, you kind of start customizing stuff.
Right.
Well, with me, it was the same way. Like when the Super Friends cartoon came out, they never made a Sullivan Grundy action figure. So I found an old Incredible Hulk that chewed up by a dog, painted in white, put some like G.I. Joe pants on him and a shirt, and there's my Sullivan Grundy. So I actually had the action figure to fight Superman and Batman and Robin with.
Right.
Because they didn't even make it back then.
I tried to do that with an old Frankenstein, an old Boris Karloff-esque Frankenstein too. I tried that with. It was close. It probably was as close as yours, but I think you could sort of see what I was trying to go for.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And then when the internet came out, we started calling the internet. I see a guy, his name was Zombo, and he actually took old dolls and he painted them up to look like little clowns and zombies and such.
Right.
Man, I can do that, So I started calling St. Vincent's and yard sales and thrift stores, buying up these old dolls, started painting them up, and there was a convention that was in Tell City, Indiana. It was called Iron Stock. It was a haunter's convention. We were doing haunted attractions at the time. So I thought, well, maybe I can make some of these smaller props to be able to sell them. So started taking, latex and cotton and, put props and such, and they started selling, started making money. So I'm like, man, I'll just keep it going. So it kind of evolved from there. And then, like now, we do shows Nashville, Clarksville. We got one coming up in Bowling Green. I mean, we do shows like all over the place. So, you know, it became a hobby, but then the hobby started kind of paying for itself and started paying for the, you know, the room, the board, the traveling, the eating. So,
right.
you know, it kind of worked out pretty good. It's nothing I can retire on or anything. It's like I said, it's a good hobby, but it's not that I can make a living at, you know, but it does make money though.
Right.
And, you know, we have hit or miss. Some of the shows are really good shows, and we make, you know, really good, and then some shows are kind of hit or miss. Sometimes people buy the stuff up, some people are not as interested, but, you know, with the internet and with, you know, local stores and stuff, you know, I've got my stuff, you know, stretched out quite a few places. And, you know, someone if they like it, and they keep selling, people, you know, I'll keep making it.
Oh, absolutely. And that's the sort of, it's one of those throw spaghetti on the wall and see what sticks. Well, you know, I mean, when we first met, this was like I think one of my maiden signings. I think I might have done one here local, maybe one there, maybe that one there, maybe one in Nashville. But you were like it was like my first Paducah one. Because like I said, we knew each other through music, you know, and I played some music shows up there and stuff. So it was weird. Sometimes it's like, okay, I thought you were a music guy. I'm like, I mean, yeah, I am, but I kind of fell into this. And then it was just like, oh, okay. And then it was so strange. So it was one of those things where it's like, oh, well, this was just some crap I was doing in my living room or my little office or something. And then now it's to the point where, okay, I mean, do you have that same feeling when you make something, you go, okay, it's on the shelf. Okay, now it's out in the world. And let's see how people react to it. And it's weird because certain things will take on a life of its own. You know.
Yeah, certain things kind of work in that direction too. Like you might do something and it worked really good and really take off, and then it dies out. People just quit wanting it. But then again, you know, you try to bring in something different, or you try something new, or you get an idea, and some of that stuff works really good, some of it don't. So I mean, it's kind of hit or miss, trial and error, but you know, it's fun. You know, that's something to do.
And it's for the art. I mean,
Rick Baker and, you know, Tom Savini, all these special effect artists were like really big influences on me. You know, when I was fourth grade, I was like, I want to move to Hollywood. I want to be a student actor. I want to, you know, dress up these monster suits and make them, you know, be in movies. You know, didn't quite ever make it out to California, but, you know, we did do the haunted houses and haunted attractions, you know, collected masks and made costumes and stuff.
right.
So that kind of, you know, evolved into what I do today. But, yeah, it's kind of like, you know, a smaller version, because when you do like a haunted attraction, it's like you do a movie, but you're doing the same movie over and over again with multiple people seeing it every time. The audience changes every time they go through there.
Right.
But, you know, you got your creatures and your characters and your monsters, whatever in there, and, you know, sound, light, all that stuff, you know, it all comes together. And like I said, it's like doing your own, like, low budget, small movie production, you know. But like I said, over the years, we had a lot of fun doing it, but we've kind of retired to move away from doing that now because insurance and a lot of the kids that helped us out over the years, they kind of grew up and everything. You know, we still got a lot of the old stuff and everything, but I help out other people with their attractions and sell equipment, sell stuff. I don't just do the small props either. I do like full-size creatures, too. I do like, you know, large monsters and, you know, movie replicas and stuff like that, too. So,
right. Well, I remember seeing like.
If you have the chance, be sure to put a link to the Oller's Odditties on Facebook because I got a lot of pictures, a lot of stuff on there. And I also put on there what I'm doing new shows and stuff, too.
Right.
We're actually working right now in Paducah, Kentucky of doing a large megacon at the Trader's Mall. We're kind of in the works of doing it. I won't say much now. It might fall through, but
right.
we've got it, you know, hopefully it'll go through. So we'll see what happens.
Well, I know in the second book, the Hauntings of the Kentucky, Hauntings of the Kentucky State Penitentiary is one, and then Hauntings of the Western Lunatic Asylum is the one that's coming out next month around the 28th. So I'm hoping once I, you know, have that, and like most people, they're waiting for their income tax to come in to do any larger purchases and kind of replenish their stock and stuff, you know. So I'm hoping to have, you know, a decent amount of books in some different things. And, you know, I mean, I've actually got to the point where I'm starting to do, you know, some artwork, you know, related from everything from like the LBL monster to stuff that's connected to some characters in my books. So I'm going to try to kind of branch out into that. I'm not in any sort of position to try to take on the stuff you guys are tackling. About as far as I ever really got into makeup, other than I think I sent you like I don't know if I sent you the weird looking kind of Halloween makeup where I kind of looked like a psychotic or something. That was escaped or
Oh,
something.
yeah, I remember. Yeah, you did say that to me. I did see that. That was pretty crazy.
Well, I was trying to.
The thing about maybe you used it was like a movie character or something like that.
Well, yeah, I debated about it. I would love to make a small budget thing, kind of like, like the Nightmare Sisters, like Quigley and Bauer and all those, not just like, slasher bimbos from Mars or something, but just, that kind of tongue-in-cheek touch of the 80s stuff to where you've got this kind of force of nature, but you can still have some levity to it to where it's not just, I'm not wanting to do, okay, did you ever watch like Don't Play with Dead Things or, something like that, or Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things?
Yeah.
And you know how like some of that too had sort of that kind of tongue-in-cheek aspect and kind of a Freddy Krueger-ish thing, to where you can have those breaks in it and where it's not just pure insanity for, because that's, first of all, I think it's too much for a person to deal with, but also you kind of go, okay, and you kind of get desensitized to it. And that way you got the highs and the lows, just like you want to have in music. You don't want to have wide open all the time, which at one time that's all I did. But then you want to have to where it rises and falls and creates moods. But yeah, I mean, I'd like to one day. But that's probably the that was actually sort of a nod to Vincent Price. You were talking about was it Madhouse or the film that he did where he had like the hood and his nose was blacked out and it kind of went under his cheeks, where it looked kind of skeletal.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it was kind of a nod to that because, again, Vincent Price is my dude. But I'll tell you what, before we get real deep off into the rest of this, because like I said, I don't want to keep you too long, and I do appreciate your time. I do want to mention you had said Ollie's Oddities, or Oller's, OllersOddities.com, correct?
Just under Oller's Oddities on Facebook's the best way to find me. Because anything that I make, any of the new dolls or pictures or anything that I've got, books or anything like that, I usually post pictures up on there. And I always post on there whenever our shows are and where our shows are going to be at. Like I said, we usually go from St. Louis to Nashville to anywhere within, this radius here. But
well, and it's definitely grown.
If you can just be able to pop up a link on there and show them like the Facebook page or something like that, I'd appreciate it. But yeah, you can contact me right through it or just through Doug Oller on Facebook. So like I said, I'll mail order, sell stuff, online, and if you're local, I'll put it back in the car. With me, Walmart parking lot or something,
Well, and I'll say this to to the listeners. I mean, because like you said, he's got a really wide net. So if you're in Nashville and you can't necessarily make it to St. Louis or something, stick around, keep an eye on his Facebook page, and he's going to be there. He's humping it, man. He's always out there hustling.
Oh, yeah, that's not impossible to do mail orders either, too. I mean, I'll ship stuff through mail, but I've sold stuff on Facebook to people in Alaska and different places, all over.
That's killer, man.
If somebody wants what I've got, I'm willing to part with it. I'll make more. That's one thing. I don't mind selling anything. Once it's gone, I just make more stuff. So it gives me more chances to try different stuff and see what works, what don't work.
Yeah. See, that was the thing with me because, like I said, there's some stuff I drew. Because I would do like paintings and some in watercolor, some in oil, I do a lot in charcoals and stuff of maybe stuff from like The Last Man on Earth, with Vincent Price to this and that. Yeah, I want to work on do like a 30 Days of Night painting, touch on some of that, just because that's another one of my favorite vampire films. But let me ask you before we get too far off into this, what was something like when you were really small, be it a movie or be it an event or something that scared you and maybe in some which way led you to doing the sort of work that you do and have an interest in sort of hobbies that you got?
Oh, yeah. Like I said, the circus sideshow stuff is always like a big influence when I really started getting into it because I really like that whole thing. But actually, movie-wise, I think what really scared me, what really kind of got in my head, there was a movie that came out in the 80s. It was called Madman. It was basically almost like a Jason ripoff. The kids were at camp and they sparked this, maniac, and he wound up killing off everybody. It was just a little ghost story they were telling at the beginning, but it wound up being like a true legend. So that right there just always kind of got me thinking, you got to be careful of the little tales you hear, the little legendary stories, the little, campfire stuff. There might be something behind it, and that's always kind of stayed in the back of my head. But, yeah, it inspired me, that, and like I said, like the Trilogy of Terror, and then, stuff in the 70s, like the old black and white, Universal monster movies. I mean, all that stuff's always, I always fit to my head. I always got that imagination working. Like I said, the D&D, and the movies and everything. I mean, it's just always been, and music too. Like I said, music's always been a big influence. I've always been a huge, Sabbath and Zeppelin fan, and classic stuff. I don't listen to music that was like 10 years older than what my generation was, but it just kept. I don't know, it just all kind of works together. It's all, sometimes you get inspired just by hearing a certain song or watching a certain movie, and there's always ideas out there too. Anything you can pull from. I don't blatantly try to rip nobody off. I don't do like cheesy dolls or Annabelle dolls or something like that, or try to make an actual Evil Dead replica that looks just like the movie thing. I'll do my own versions. Right. But to me, it just keeps it original. And if they want to use it as a movie prop, or if they want to just display it in their house, or they want to do whatever, it's a one of a kind. There's no one else is going to have that, and everyone's going to be different. Everyone's going to have its own little touch, its own little thing. Nothing's like a factory stamped out exactly like anything else. Everything's all hand done.
Yeah, you're not cranking it out. You're not cranking it out like Ford Motors or nothing.
Like the Armstrong show, and I mean, I've got probably about 900 to 1,000 items that I've made and sold over the years. It's been haunted attractions, people's collections, and probably in tubs and closets somewhere too. So they're in dumps. I don't even know where all the stuff is now, but hopefully, some of the stuff. And I see stuff every once in a while. I'll see a picture on Facebook, or I'll see somebody holding something. It's like, man, I made that. That's one of mine. Here it is, still, still got life, it's still moving around. People still trading, selling, stuff going back and forth. So
and that shows, and that shows something about the product too. The fact that it's endeared to people. And that the fact that, even after, maybe 5 years, 10 years down the road, it's still part of their life, and that's telling for the quality of the product. But I'll tell you what, Doug.
We do this show in Metropolis, the Superman Festival, which we think Superman Festival will be all superheroes and all that kind of stuff. But man, I've been sitting up there for like the past 7 years, and I have like certain people, they'll come from all over, and they'll buy 1 or 2 items, every time they see me. And then that's been over years, and they showed me a picture of like a cabinet that they had, and the whole cabinet's full of the stuff that I've made over the years, even stuff I don't even make anymore. And I've seen it in there. It's like, wow, this is so cool.
That's gonna make you feel good.
It's not just a Halloween item or just decoration. It's like that's part of their house, part of their home. It's like, wow, it's pretty cool.
Right. That like you said, and again, it's again, it's weird when you do something that, I mean, you hope people like it, but then it's, for me anyway, maybe it's just me. But it's weird to see somebody go like, I really, really liked it. Because, like I said, I'm the sort of guy where I see, like, all my own flaws and maybe something I wrote. And you do your best. You edit your best and do whatever. But then, like you said, once you kind of push it off into the water, you're like, okay, well, the baby's out, and let's see what happens with it. But I'll tell you what, Doug, I appreciate having you on, man. And like I said, what I'm going to do is once we get this done and I'm in the post-production of this, I want to make sure to get all your links because I'm going to include that in this episode of House of Asher.
Yeah,
and
be sure to tag me in it, put it on my Facebook, and so I really want to see what it's like. I've never heard my own voice across the radio before, so we'll see how it comes out.
Yeah, man. Like I said, hopefully everything comes out well. And like I said, and either way, man, this is a thing where we were just kind of hanging out and just kicking it, just having a good talk. Like I said, man, we're almost right at 20, or actually almost right at 30 minutes, and I appreciate you taking out some time of your day.
Now, I'll keep you in touch, too. When we start doing some more shows and we have more things coming up, for the book signings and stuff, we'll get you hooked up with the table, get your booth out there, and, try to get you, show up the shows we show up at,
That'll work.
If you get something going on, let me know, I'll be there,
All right, partner. Well, man, I appreciate you tuning in, and then I'll talk to you later.
All right. Thank you, sir. Talk to you later.
All right, buddy. Bye-bye. That was Mr. Doug Oller. And like I said, pretty good fella. Like I said, I'm hoping we'll be able to do a lot more shows. And like I said, I'm talking with him right now, and hopefully the next episode he'll be one of our official sponsors. Like I said, he's a really good guy. Love his work, back his work, and like to see artists helping artists. But I do want to tell everybody thank you for tuning in for my little show. It means a lot to me, and I want to hear back from you guys. I want to hear what you think of the shows, recommendations, criticisms, and anything you think can make it better, ideas for guests, ideas for different situations. And what we'll do is we're going to shut her down. Now, like I said, I want you to go out and have some fun. Visit the stores, go to a movie, visit some loved ones. But as the evening draws near and the world slows down. Make sure you got your doors locked. You got your porch light on. Check under your bed, check in your closet, because you never know what might be there. And until next time, stay scared.